That's why I think it's so frustrating. It's not just the production. It's not just that he's still having a great season at his age now. It's that it was so easy and it made so much sense to add him to this team, and they still didn't get it over the finish line.
It is time to reflect on the 2026 Cincinnati Reds. No, the season still far from over, but yesterday's loss to the Phillies was a reminder of what could have been, and for my money, what should have been. Of course, this is also a reminder that it isn't my money. It was the Reds' money that they put up and that they offered Kyle Schwarber this offseason, and they didn't get it done. And in the third inning of yesterday's game, well, 3-0 pitch goes deep, effectively ends the game for the Reds. They had a chance in the eighth. But the bottom line is Kyle Schwarber, well, that was a layup. It was a layup to bring back the kid from Middletown, bring him home to Cincinnati, to the team he was rooting for, and to give him a roster that could win. Elly De La Cruz, Chase Burns, Hunter Green. There would have been plenty of pieces that you could build around with Kyle Schwarber. And the interesting thing is, when I think about Schwarber and the Reds' pursuit of him and the Reds' failure of signing him, it goes back to what Gordon Whitmire wrote yesterday in the reservations that Schwarber had about the Reds franchise. He is the hometown kid. He is the guy that rooted for the Reds growing up. And so this should have been an easy sell. We have Hunter Green on a great deal. We have Elly De La Cruz, and we're going to keep him long term. We have all of these other pieces that are promising, from Chase Burns to Rhett Lauder, etc. And instead, after meeting with the Reds, after the Reds pitched him on the idea of signing with Cincinnati, well, there were still concerns, according to Gordon Whitmire of Cincinnati.com. Check out this quote that really gives the detail and sheds light on what things were for Schwarber's camp. Team sources said Schwarber questioned whether the Reds would have the resources to keep a competitive team on the field for the duration of his contract if so much of their payroll was tied up in him. And so I've seen a lot of people say, oh, it was a money thing. The Reds didn't offer enough. And yeah, that's true. The reported offer that the Reds made was a little less than the Phillies. But I don't think that was it. I think it was about winning. And when I look at Kyle Schwarber and his age and where he grew up and the team he rooted for, well, he's pretty much my generation. I'm 34, he's 33 years old. He remembers Ken Griffey Jr. coming home in 2000 and what that did on February 10th, 2000. It's the most exciting time, exciting day for me as a Reds fan, period, ever. And it wasn't about what happened on the field. It's what happened off of it. The kid came home. And when Ken Griffey Jr. came home, it was to fanfare. He was the hero. He was going to save and rejuvenate a Reds team, be the missing piece after the 99 team, my favorite Reds team of all time, won 96 games. Griffey was going to put them over the top. Well, what did they do after Ken Griffey Jr. took a pay cut to come home and forced his way to Cincinnati? Well, they didn't build around him. They didn't put the pieces around him. And so Kyle Schwarber was certainly reminded of that excitement. It took me back as I was thinking about Schwarber. I was thinking about Ken Griffey Jr. when he said this on February 10th, 2000.
Well, I'm finally home.
And it was all smiles when the kid came to Cincinnati, and then, well, it was almost instant. Injuries derailed what was an awesome career for Ken Griffey Jr. And that's it. Ken Griffey Jr. quickly became a villain, quickly became a guy that people blamed for the Red struggles, when in reality, yeah, he had his injuries and he wasn't the guy he was in Seattle. He was still a good player. And I remember thinking back to, I was thinking like through this. In 2002, when the Spider-Man movie, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie came out, well, Ken Griffey Jr. took young Trey Griffey to see it in theater. And I remember reading in the Enquirer at the time that he got heckled. And that's it. Kyle Schwarber remembers that. He's 33 years old, remembers that. That was probably a fond memory of his, of Ken Griffey Jr. coming to Cincinnati. But if he was going to be that guy, if he was going to come to Cincinnati, if he was going to join his hometown team, he was going to do it with the idea of winning a World Series, with the possibility of being aggressive, of going after it. And the Reds, whatever they did convince him, they didn't convince him enough that they were all in on winning, that they would do what it takes to put the team around him. And during the Griffey era, they didn't do enough to put the team around Griffey. Schwarber saw that and wasn't convinced during the meetings. And that's why yesterday, when he returned to Great American Ballpark and hit this home run and gave the Phillies the lead for good, well, it was just a reminder of what could have been here in Cincinnati, a Kyle Schwarber, Elly De La Cruz combo, a much different era that could have started this offseason. Instead, Kyle Schwarber is hitting home runs for the Phillies at GABP.
And you can rest assured that it doesn't matter if it's 3-0 or 0-0. Schwarber is swinging if it's something he likes, and it is a 3-ball, no-strike count. Pitch from Abbott. Boom. It is 3-0. A home run into the bleachers in right field, and I mean it was a rocket. No sooner did I get that out of my mouth, he was swinging 3-0, and he did. There are certain hitters that 3-0, you just don't give them anything to hit. And that pitch was...
Boom. That's it. And we had this planned long before he was going to hit that home run, and it's just a reminder, like, whatever the hang-up is, Kyle Schwarber's awesome, and it would have been awesome to see him playing for the Reds this season.
Yeah, and even more awesome than he's been so far this year, because as soon as he hit that home run, my thought process was, what does 31 home runs for Kyle Schwarber this year look like if he was playing for the Reds, if he was playing in GABP? Well, there's 9 more on there if he had played all those games in GABP this year. You overlay his batted balls with this stadium, and he's up near 40 home runs, depending on the flight of some of those balls with the distances given. So his league lead takes even another step if he's playing in this Reds ballpark with this Reds team, and just thinking about how much it would change this organization and the feeling of this lineup if Schwarber was in it, and even taking it to another level with how poor Suarez has been so far this year, the swap of the signings of the offseason. Because it's no secret the Reds shifted their focus from Schwarber to Suarez when they missed out on Schwarber, and Suarez has underperformed while Schwarber's had one of the best seasons of his career, which just makes the miss even harder to stomach.
Yeah, you play the what-if game, and it would have been really nice and welcomed had he been in the middle of that lineup, providing that bat and that consistency. And MLB Network did a segment recently where they listed the most valuable players amongst major league teams, and they had Kyle Schwarber listed as 5th most valuable on that team for just the seasons he's having. So you look at what could have been for this Reds team, and it just makes you wonder where this team would be had they been a Kyle Schwarber away.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, for all their flaws, and it wouldn't fix everything. Like, I got this on X yesterday. Like, he wouldn't have fixed everything. Well, yeah, no doubt. Guess what? The Phillies aren't a perfect team either. Like, there aren't going to be, the Reds are never going to have a perfect roster. But a Kyle Schwarber, Elly De La Cruz, getting to see them every single day at GABP is a heck of a place to start. It is. You get the electricity of Elly De La Cruz, and then you get the power of a guy like Kyle Schwarber. You mix that in, you roll it together, and it gives you a little leeway for a Matt McLain who underperforms, or for Eugenio Suarez. Maybe they still sign him in a perfect world, and he hits 9 home runs through 62 games, and it's like, he's underperforming. It's like, well, yeah, but you have Kyle Schwarber. Elly De La Cruz gets hurt for a bit. Well, you have Kyle Schwarber. It would have given them a margin for error that they just don't have right now. It would have given them a watchability factor that they just don't have right now. I bet a lot of you that just saw that home run and heard that radio call, guess what? Probably heard it from the first time, because you're not paying as much attention to the Reds as you were 2 months ago when it felt like they were going to be a playoff contender, because they aren't that right now. And Kyle Schwarber being in town, it's just a reminder of what could have been, and it stinks. The Phillies, by the way, started the season off really, really rough. And when you have talented players like Kyle Schwarber, it gives you the talent and the ability to dig or climb yourself out of a hole, which the Reds very much in a hole right now, 41-49 on the season.
And the quote flashed up there from Gordon Wittenmeyer's article yesterday, Kyle Schwarber's concerns that the Reds wouldn't have the resources to keep a competitive team around him for the duration of the contract if he signs for $30+ million a year. Those seems like completely valid concerns to me, and it poses the question, I guess, in my mind, did the Reds lose Kyle Schwarber this last offseason, or have they lost him over the last 25 years of not being able to consistently add to the roster and field a competitive team? I mean, James immediately went back to Ken Griffey Jr., which obviously makes sense for the hometown hero connection, but I immediately went back to Joey Votto. I mean, the best player in certainly the era I've seen for this Reds team. He was here on a massive contract, was here for a long time, should have won 2 MVPs, did win 1. And the Reds never really gave him a roster to compete. One of the best players in the history of the organization then retires, never winning a playoff series. And I imagine Kyle Schwarber sitting there with a similar contract in front of him is wondering, will the same thing happen to me in Cincinnati? I mean, everyone here thinks Joey Votto's a Hall of Famer. They think he should be, and his play with the Reds deserves a spot in Cooperstown. But the conversation outside of Cincinnati is incredibly different because of the lack of success he had in the postseason. And part of that is because of the Reds rosters they had around him. I imagine Schwarber was worried about how they turned on Ken Griffey, but also worried about what happened to Joey Votto at the end of his career, where he was chasing numbers, and that was all fun, and the fans certainly loved that, but there was never really a chance to win at the end of his career. And I'm sure Votto would have liked that, and certainly Schwarber prioritized that, and that's why he stayed in Philly.
Yeah, and the other big takeaway I had from that article, too, that kind of ties back to that is, everyone's saying they thought this was a done deal. So then my big question is, what changed? What happened? Because I would imagine that is what it is, those concerns, and you know that kind of going into maybe some of those conversations, or did the conversations really shift in that tone to kind of make, the deal end up not happening? So that's the other part of it that I, kind of question and wonder is just, what really happened during those conversations, and we'll likely never know.
And the thing is that I've seen, and there are a lot of Reds fans out there, oh, he's happy in Philly. He's happy in Philly. Well, yeah, of course he's happy in Philly. And the difference is when you're trying to get someone, convince someone to join you, when they have leverage, and Schwarber has the leverage because he has options, then you really need to convince them, hey, this is what's going to happen, and here's why you should join us. And so if he's comfortable in Philly, but deep down wants to be a Red, and Bryce Harper's talking about it, and Elly De La Cruz thinks it's a done deal and all of those things, well, great, but Kyle Schwarber really needs to believe in your vision. And that's it. And I think that's what it came down to. I really don't think it was money. Maybe it was. And people are always going to default to that, and that's fine. All I know is and the reason I compare it to Ken Griffey Jr. is he took a significant pay cut to come to Cincinnati and sign that deal. And 2 years later, he was a villain in this town. And ridiculous. I'm not saying he was perfect at all, but he became a villain very, very quickly. And so if I'm Kyle Schwarber, and he's around my age, and so he remembers that, then guess what? I would want those reassurances, and I would want them to convince me, hey, we are going to build a winner. And I don't think it would have taken that much. Like, we didn't know Chase Burns was going to be this year, but he knew what Hunter Green was. He obviously knows what Elly De La Cruz is. And if Elly gets in there and says, hey, it's a done deal, well, get that across the finish line. If it's money, if it's reassurances that you're going to add around him and build around him, heck, if it's, hey, we're going to get Eugenio Suarez in here as well and have both of you, which is definitely how I think, regardless of how realistic it is in Reds land, that just seems like such a missed opportunity. And in this season, that certainly feels like a lost one now. I just go back to, man, in November, when Joe Burrow's working his way back from a toe, and we're not really paying attention to the Reds. Had they done this, we'd probably be having a different conversation right now when it comes to this team and their record.
Yeah, there's been plenty of seasons over recent memory where Reds fans have been clamoring for more bats in the lineup, whether it's at the trade deadline or free agency.
Forever.
But there's never been a bat this good that made this much sense. And I think that's why it's so frustrating, is because it fell into their lap. The Reds needed a power bat. They needed a DH. They've had one of the worst DH spots in the league since it became a universal position. And Kyle Schwarber filled every single one of those needs, also adding the fact that he wants to be a Red, and all of his teammates in Philly thought it was done, and teammates or potential teammates in Cincinnati thought it was done. That's why I think it's so frustrating. It's not just the production. It's not just that he's still having a great season at his age now. It's that it was so easy, and it made so much sense to add him to this team, and they still didn't get it over the finish line.